Insta360 just released the brand new Go 3S, which is the successor to the Go 3. So today I'm going to share my initial impressions of the differences between the two cameras to help you decide if you should upgrade. First, I'll discuss the new design, then I'll dive into the new features of the Go 3S, and then of course I'll give you some all-important image quality comparisons so you can see for yourself how each camera looks. And then at the end, I'll share my thoughts on whether it's actually worth the upgrade. And just so you know, Insta360 is not sponsoring this video, which means no money has changed hands, but they did send the Go 3S to me early for my initial impressions. So first of all, let's look at the design of the Go 3S. And at first glance, it's almost identical to the original Go 3. They're virtually the same size and weight. You've also got the same color options. You've got the black and the white. I'm personally a big fan of the black, so I'm glad they've carried that on to the Go 3S. The USB port is in the same spot. It's got the same quick release system on the bottom. They've both got the same flip up screen, which I'm a big fan of. So there's really only 3 design changes. The first is pretty minor. Power and quick change buttons on the side of the camera are made of a slightly grippier material, which I think is a good thing. For such a small little camera, extra grip really does help. Next, the outside of the actual Go 3 camera has a more grippy texture once again, which I'm a big fan of. Anything that can make something this small easier to handle is definitely a positive. But the most noticeable difference is the larger lens and lens guard, which powers the new 4K resolution. And with the lens guard being noticeably bigger, I've actually found that this makes it way easier to take out of the case. With the original Go 3, it could be a little bit finicky and hard to pull out at times, but the new lens guard makes it super easy. Okay, so let's talk about some of the new features that you'll find in the Go 3S. Now, there's really just one main hardware upgrade, and that is the ability to shoot in 4K. The previous Go 3 was capped at 2.7K, so it is really nice to see the S model now having the ability to shoot in that 4K resolution, especially considering that most online content, especially on YouTube these days, is in 4K. You can also shoot in 200 frames per second slow motion, while the Go 3 was capped at 120 frames per second slow motion. And the camera itself is now waterproof up to 10 meters, while the Go 3 was capped at 5 meters. Now, most of the other changes are really software upgrades. So first of all, you've got a new level indicator, which I actually quite like. Since the Go 3 is such a small little camera, it can be quite easy to have it on a bit of a tilt when you're filming with it. But the level indicator just helps you to make sure you're filming perfectly level, so you're maximizing the quality of your final shot. On top of that, the 3S will automatically determine the recording aspect ratio based on the orientation of the camera. So if you're holding it horizontally, it'll record in a 16:9 aspect ratio. But if you're holding the camera vertically, it will record in a 9:16 aspect ratio. Next, we've got a mega view field of view mode, which is basically an ultra wide view, but it's less distorted around the edges. And I think this is really good. It's always nice to have less distortion in your video. Next, we've got a new mode, which is called interval mode. And you can switch this on in the settings menu. And this is kind of like an automatic vlogging mode. Basically, you turn it on and it will automatically switch the camera on and record at set intervals of time, and then switch the camera back off to save battery. So this essentially will record clips throughout your day. And then when you're finished, you can use the auto edit feature in the app and it will stitch it together into a kind of highlights reel of whatever you've been up to. And I actually think this could be really cool, especially on days where you just kind of want to capture the vibe of what happened. You're not too concerned about getting super cinematic shots, but maybe you want a mini vlog for social media. Maybe you want to get the highlights of a bike ride, or even if you want to capture like the day in the life of your pet. And I think this is a really easy, hands-free, low friction way of maximizing your Go 3S. Next, we've now got gesture control in the Go 3S, which is really nice to see considering the X4 and the Ace Pro both have gesture control as well. So this lets you start and stop video recording as well as take photos just with hand gestures. Next, just like the Ace Pro, you can cancel your video recordings if you're not happy with your shot. While you're recording, all you have to do is hold down the record button and it will cancel the shot and not save the file. Another feature I'm actually really happy to see is compatibility with Apple Find My. So if you've got an iPhone, then you're probably familiar with the Find My feature that a lot of Apple devices have, which lets you see where your device is located just from your iPhone. And again, because the Go 3S is such a small little camera, it's really nice to just have that bit of extra peace of mind knowing that if you leave it behind somewhere, you'll get a notification pop up on your iPhone or your Apple Watch saying, hey, you've left your Go 3 behind. Even if you can't find it in your house, you can ping it from your iPhone so that the Go 3 will make a sound to help you locate it really easily. Apart from that, most of the features are the same between the Go 3 and the Go 3S. They've got all the same record modes and compatibility with accessories. So it is nice to see that the Go 3S S is the same price as the Go 3. So it's basically going to replace the Go 3 rather than be an upgrade in the same line. Now let's talk about the thing most people want to see, which is the image quality comparison. And to be totally honest with you, I was actually a bit skeptical before I got my hands on the Go 3S because I thought, what difference can it really make going from 2.7K to 4K? But I was actually very impressed. First of all, the bump in resolution does really look quite excellent. In my head-to-head comparisons between the 3 and the 3S, that extra resolution really did give me a lot more detail in my shots, which resulted in sharper looking overall images, plus a lot more flexibility when it came to zooming and cropping on videos and photos. Plus, I'm also actually really impressed to see that the Go 3S has a 50% higher recording bitrate at 120 megabits per second, while the Go 3 was 50% lower at 80 megabits per second. And in my testing, this did result in less pixelation in my videos. That was one of my kind of pet peeves with the Go 3, was you did tend to get a little bit of pixelation, depending of course on the lighting conditions, but with the Go 3S it's a lot less noticeable because of that higher bitrate. Another thing about the image quality that actually quite surprised me was the dynamic range on the Go 3S is noticeably better. Even while I was out and about filming with these cameras side by side, I could actually tell just by looking at the preview screens that the dynamic range on the Go 3S was better. And you can see in these two shots that you're getting a lot more detail in the darker areas, which results in just a much nicer overall looking shot. And then lastly, another thing that again surprised me was that the color is actually significantly better on the Go 3S. I found it to be a lot more vivid than the Go 3 and actually a lot more true to life. For example, with this shot where I was filming my skateboard, you can see there's a pretty significant color difference in my pants. And I'm actually wearing those pants right now, and I can tell you the Go 3S color is a lot more true to life than the Go 3. And just overall in general, I found the Go 3S colors just more vivid, more realistic, and better balanced. Now the last thing I just want to say on image quality is that it's worth noting with the new 200 frames per second recording mode, this is capped at 1080p, but even the 1080p is pretty low quality. I personally probably wouldn't be that keen on using it very much just because it does look quite pixelated. The 120 frames per second slow-mo is a lot more usable, so if I wanted some slow-mo shots, I would opt for the 120 frames per second. So I definitely wouldn't upgrade to the Go 3S just for that extra slow-mo. So speaking of upgrading, what are my initial thoughts? Should you upgrade from the Go 3? Well, I think if you already have the Go 3, then there's really no need to upgrade to the Go 3S. 4K, dynamic range, and color improvements are all really nice to have, but I don't think they're crucial and like leagues ahead of the Go 3 for most people. And the other software upgrades are good, but again, they're not really going to change how you film with this camera drastically or improve the quality of your shots that much. However, if you really do want that extra image quality, but you don't want to spend too much extra money, you can buy the Go 3S camera standalone and then put that into your Go 3 Action Pod because they're backwards compatible, which I'm a really big fan of. I definitely applaud Insta360 for doing this. Now, if you've got a Go 2 or older camera, then I definitely think it's worth going straight to the Go 3S. I already thought it was worth upgrading from the Go 2 to the Go 3. So it's really just a no-brainer to just go straight for the Go 3S with that improved image quality and considering it's the same price as the Go 3 was. Lastly, if you have no Insta360 camera and you're really wanting to save money, then it could be a great time to pick up a Go 3 on sale or secondhand, unless you really want that 4K resolution, because the Go 3 I think still is a really solid little camera. So there you have it. Let me know what you think of the Go 3S in the comments and what questions you'd like me to answer in upcoming videos. If you want to check it out for yourself, there's a link below in the description. If you've got more questions about the Go 3 you'd like answered right away, then make sure you check out this video here where I answer my most asked Go 3 questions.